sorry. I'm getting a little bit cheese with this goddamn computer. God.
Carefully unbox the packaging and
Force
remove the
quit,
printer
force
out.
quit, force quit. 100 gigs. There's more shit. Let's say presidential debate 2024 live. Nobody cares. Nobody cares, nigga. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. While you guys watch that. Oh, thanks. Oh, thanks for nothing. Oh, thanks for nothing. Oh, thanks for nothing, CNN.
Trump term. And when we listen to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American people are not being addressed, I think the choice is clear in this election.
Trump saying people are eating cats and dogs. What? Is that true?
I'm the man. I am. If I did it, I'd do it again.
I fired most of those people.
Is that dead ass true?
Not so graciously. They did bad things or a bad job. I fired them. They never fired one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan and the Taliban and the 13 people whose were just killed viciously and violently.
Is that
killed.
dead ass
and I
true?
got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen. So when somebody does a bad job, I fire him. And you take a guy like Esper. He was no good. I fired him. So he writes a book. Another one writes a book. Because with me, they can write books. With nobody else can they. But they have done such a poor job. And they never fire anybody. Look at the economy. Look at the inflation. They didn't fire any of their economists. They have the same people. That's a good way not to have books written about you. But just to finish, I got more votes than any Republican in history by far. In fact, I got more votes than any president, sitting president in history by far.
Let me continue on immigration. It was what you wanted to talk about earlier, so let's get back to your deportation proposal that the vice president has reacted to as well. President Trump, you call this the largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country. You say you would use the National Guard. You say if things get out of control, you'd have no problem using the U.S. military.
Police, yes.
You also said you would use local police. How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number is much higher. Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be going door to door in this country?
Yeah, it is much higher because of them. They allowed criminals, many millions of criminals. They allowed
What I want to
terrorists.
do,
They allowed
we're going to do this for
common street
Canadian
criminals.
politics
They
as
allowed
well.
people to come in, drug dealers,
We're
to
gonna do
come
this for
into our
Canadian
country, and they're now
politics
in the
as well.
United States and told by their countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her to put into our country. And this will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them to allow, and I think they probably did it because they think they're going to get votes, but it's not worth it because they're destroying the fabric of our country by what they've done. There's never been anything done like this at all. They've destroyed the fabric of our country. Millions of people let in, and all over the world, crime is down all over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof. Despite their fraudulent statements that they made, crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime. And it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But Vice President,
They were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud, just like their number of 818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, I think this is so rich, coming from someone who has been prosecuted for national security crimes, economic crimes, election interference, has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next
She's
big
using a straw
court
man.
appearance is in November at his own criminal
She's attacking his
sentencing.
character instead of
And let's
attacking
be
the actual
clear,
point that he's making.
where each person stands on the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law
Okay.
and respect for law enforcement. The former vice
all a chess
president called
match.
for
There's no-
defunding federal law enforcement 45,000 agents.
There's no right
get
or
this,
wrong in my
on the
head.
day after he was arraigned on 34
There's what
felony
will benefit
counts. So let's talk about what is
your
important
agenda.
in this race. It is
Like if I was
important
American,
that we
you know?
move forward, that we turn the page on this same old
It's so hot
tired
in here.
rhetoric and address
so hot in here.
the needs of the American people, address what we need to do about the housing shortage, which I have a plan for, address what we must do to support our small businesses, address bringing down the price of groceries. But frankly, the American people
Chat,
are
type in.
exhausted with this same old tired playbook.
Who you're going for if you're American?
Excuse me. Every
Trump
one
or
of those
Kamala?
cases was started by them against their political opponent. And I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest on appeal. And you saw that with the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme
Ask
Court.
my dog if he's watching,
I'm winning most of them.
the
But
presidential
those are
debate.
cases, it's called weaponization. Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department. Every one of those cases was involved with the DOJ from
He
Atlanta
has a good-
and
he has a
Fawning
good
Willis
comeback to the straw man.
Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York. Every
I think
one of
Kamala
those
has
cases.
another
And
comeback,
then
though. You can see it
they
in her
say,
eyes.
Oh, he's a criminal. They're the ones that made them go after me. By the way, Joe Biden was found essentially guilty on the documents case. And what happened in my documents case? They said, oh, that's the toughest of them all. A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out. It's weaponization, and they used it, and it's never happened in this country. They used it to try and win an election. They're
President Trump-
fake cases.
President Trump, thank you. A really quick response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization.
I mess
of
with the
Justice
fact he's
Department.
still
Well, let's talk about
addressed
extreme
it.
and understand the context in which this
You-
election
you
in
have to address
2024
it on
is
a
taking
debate-
place.
a presidential
the
debate
United
stage.
States Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president would
Maybe
essentially
in public
be
you can just
immune
dodge it, but you
from
have
any
to.
misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand, this is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his
I knew
political
she had any.
enemy.
I knew she had something. I saw it in
Someone
her
who
eyes.
has openly
Good work, Kamala. Good
expressed
work. Good work.
disdain for members of our military. Understand what it would mean if Donald Trump were back in the White House with no
She got a nice-
guardrails.
a
Because
nice
certainly
suit
we
with
know
the
now the
pin,
court
too.
won't
I messed
stop
with the
him. We know
pin.
J.D. Vance is not
I
going
like
to stop him.
the frilly shirt
It's
too.
up to the American people.
Vice President
stop
Harris.
it.
Good look.
Thank
Good
you.
look. Good look. Good
Vice
look.
President Harris, in your last run for
Yo,
president,
who's that?
We got to
This is the
continue
one
here.
that
Is that
weaponized, not me.
what's that girl
She
from,
weaponized. I probably took
that girl
a bullet
from,
to the head because of
that TV
the
series?
things that they say about
Scandal.
me. They
Olivia
talk about
Pope? Is that
democracy.
Olivia
I'm a
Pope?
threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy with a
President
fake
Trump.
Russia investigation
We do have a lot
that
to get.
went nowhere.
We have a lot to get to. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban fracking. Now
Olivia
you don't.
Pope.
You wanted mandatory government
Yeah.
programs for assault weapons. Now
Olivia.
your campaign says you don't.
Olivia.
You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions
Jeez, Olivia Pope
changed?
dripped out
So
too. Look at that
my values
suit.
have not changed, and I'm going to discuss every one of the, at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States, and in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking. My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of
Let's see what
energy so
fracking
we
is.
reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history because of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil. As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid raised by a hardworking mother who worked and saved and was able to buy our first home when I was a teenager.
I don't know how to
The
spell it.
values I bring to the importance
Fracking?
of home ownership, knowing not everybody got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times, is a value that I bring to my work to say we are going to work with the private sector and home builders to increase 3 million
On the
homes,
dictionary,
increase
bro.
by 3 million
I think
homes
it's
by
just
the
like
end of
a
my first
political
term.
term.
My work that is related
Anybody
to
who knows what fracking
having
is,
a friend
chat.
when I was in high school who was sexually assaulted by her
Tell me.
stepfather. And my focus then on protecting women and children from violent crime is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable. My work
You think
that
Trump-
is about
Trump did it?
protecting Social Security
Did he
and
do it?
Medicare is
Did he?
based on long-standing work that I have done, protecting seniors from scams. My values have not changed. And what is important is that there is a president who actually brings values and a perspective that is about lifting
You think
people
Trump did it?
up and not
It's possible.
beating people down.
There's always a possibility,
and
but there also is a
name-calling.
possibility
the
that
true measure of the leader
it's false
is the
allegations.
leader who actually understands the strength is not
That's
in
the
beating
tough
people
part of,
down, it's in lifting
being a
people
man.
up. I intend to be that president.
President Trump, your
Well, first
False
of all, I wasn't
allegations.
given
Ask Chris Brown.
$400 million. I wish I was. My
I don't
father
know-
was a
I don't
Brooklyn
know.
builder, Brooklyn, Queens.
He looks
and a
capable
great
of it.
father, and I
He looks
learned a lot
capable
from
of
him,
it.
But I was given a
But I'm
fraction
not
of that,
gonna
a tiny
say he
fraction,
did.
and I've built it into
Unless he
many,
got-
many billions of dollars, many, many
Unless he
billions.
really lost it.
And when people see it,
If
they
he lost
are
the case,
even
100%.
surprised. So we don't have to talk about that.
I gotta check that out.
Fracking, she's been against it for 12 years. Defund the police, she's been against that forever. She gave all that stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out, wait a minute, I'm talking now, if you don't mind, please. Does that sound familiar? She went out,
This nigga,
she went out.
she said we're live.
Minnesota,
You don't
and
care.
went
He
to
doing
let
it on
criminals
purpose.
That killed people, that burned down Minneapolis.
But
She went out
I'm not
and
gonna lie.
to get 'em out
That's
of
how you know
jail.
Kamala's doing a good
She
job
did things
because
that nobody would ever think of.
she getting him in
Now
his
she wants
bag.
to do
She getting him in his bag.
Transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a
What?
radical left liberal that would do this. She wants to confiscate your guns.
So they're really
and she will
catering
never
towards
allow
their
fracking
audiences.
In Pennsylvania.
Right now, he's going
If she
very
won
far
the
right.
election,
You have to go as
fracking
far
in
right as
Pennsylvania
possible.
will end on
Kamala's
day
going
one.
as far
Just
left
to
as
finish
possible
one
from
thing,
what I'm
so
hearing. But
important
in
my
the
opinion.
debate, it doesn't sound like
So
she's
I got
actually
the oil
far
business
left.
going like nobody has
Sounds
ever
like
done
she's like middle
before.
left.
When they took over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up the roof.
Sounds like she's
They
middle left. She don't
immediately
sound like
let
a far
these guys
left,
Go
like,
to where
You know
they
what I'm
were.
saying? Like she don't sound like one
I
of
would
those
have been
ones.
5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline.
But she
So
had
they
Meg
said,
Thee
"Let's go
Stallion
back
up
to
there,
Trump."
so you know
But
it's
if she
fucked
won
the
the
other
election,
side.
the
I don't
day
know.
after that election, they'll go back
I
to
wanna like
destroying our
Kamala, but
country,
it's,
and oil will
she
be
had Meg
dead,
Thee Stallion
fossil
up
fuel
there.
will be dead. We'll go back to
I
windmills.
wanna
and we'll
like
go back
Kamala,
to
but she had
solar,
Meg Thee Stallion
where they
up there.
need
What
a whole
happened with
desert
Meg?
to get some energy to come out. You ever see a solar plant?
False
By the way,
allegation
I'm a big fan
towards
of solar.
Tory. So
But they take
yeesh, I think we got to be a Trump fan.
400,
President Trump.
500 acres of desert
President
soil.
Trump, we have a
These
lot
are
of
not good
issues
things
that we
for the
have to get
environment.
to.
That
We're
she
out of
understands.
Free Tory, free
Thank
Tory,
you.
free Tory.
Lindsay, thank you. We have an election in just 56 days. And I want to talk about the peaceful transfer of power, which, of course, we all know is a cornerstone of our democracy, and the role of a president in a moment of crisis. Mr. President, on January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on.
The Boys is just
Peacefully
satire
and patriotically.
to what's
and
actually
nobody
going
on the
on.
other side was killed.
The Boys
Ashley
is satire
Babbitt
to
was
what's
shot
actually
by
going
an
on.
out-of-control police officer that should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace. But
Speaking
we
of
didn't
which,
do this group of people that have been
RIP to the
treated so
actor and
badly.
Gen V.
I ask,
I'll find his
what
name.
about all the people that are pouring into our country and
RIP.
killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar, remember that. She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border. In fact, she said at the beginning, oh, I'm surprised you're not talking about the border yet. That's because she knows what a bad job they've done. What about those people? When are they going to be prosecuted? When are these people from countries all over the world, not just South America?
Y'all watch. I'm
They're
gonna
coming
get
in
some
from
lemon water.
all over the world, David. All over the world,
some lemon
and
water.
crime rates are down all over the world because of it.
But let me just
when
ask
are those, David, when are those people going to be prosecuted? When are the people that burned down Minneapolis going to be prosecuted? Or in Seattle, they went into Seattle, they took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle. When are those people going to be prosecuted?
But let me just ask
You might ask her that
You
question.
were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question as we move forward toward another election. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
We got new kicks. We
I
got
had
new
nothing
kicks. We
to
got
do
new
with
kicks.
that, other than
We
they
got
asked
new
me to make a
kicks.
speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to
We
be
got the
big.
Friday the
I went to
13th.
Nancy Pelosi and the
Black.
mayor of Washington, D.C., and
Red
the mayor put
undertones,
it back
red
in writing,
splacked
as you know.
undertones.
I said, this is going to be
With
a
white
very
drizzle
big
on top.
rally or whatever
It's
you
almost
want to
like
call
making
it.
food.
And again, it wasn't
went
done
into
by
my
me,
mind
it was
with
done
this?
by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000
I had
National
mud on my
Guard or
shoes.
soldiers.
I realized
They
how much it
rejected
brought
me.
out the
Nancy
shoe. I was wearing an
Pelosi
all-black
rejected
fit.
me. It was
I was like,
just
yo, why don't we
2
just
weeks
put
ago,
paint
her
on it to
daughter
do it
has
like
a
that?
tape of her saying
Functionality type
she
shit.
is fully
Shoes are made to
responsible
get
for
messed
what
up,
happened.
right?
They want to
And
get
then-
rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the
There was a
mayor
lot of
of
thoughts that went through
Washington
my
did
head.
their jobs. I wasn't responsible for
And
security.
then the red paint
Nancy
underneath
Pelosi
kind of
was responsible.
So the red
she
paint
didn't do her
underneath kind
job.
of
The question
shows
was
the
about you
splatter
as president, not
of the
about
mud
former
type
Speaker
thing.
Pelosi, but I do
Also, I was
want Vice President
painting. I had
Harris to respond
paint
here.
splatters on one of my slides. It kind of
I was at
got
the Capitol
inspired
on
through both of
January
those things.
I was
And then the white on
Vice
top kind of
President-elect.
represents
I
the
was
painting of
also
a fence,
an acting senator.
new
I was
creation,
there.
destruction and new
And
creation.
on that
Think of it
day,
like that.
the
And we're
President
calling
of
the
the
Friday
United States
13th because I
incited
love
a
horror
violent
movies,
mob
and we're turning it from
attack
bad luck into good luck.
our nation's capital.
Now these ones, I was having an idea
desecrate
of
our
you can't really
nation's
see it
capital. On
unless
that
you're
day,
in person, but
140
there's white
law
paint
enforcement
underneath the
officers were
black
injured.
splashes.
some
We're calling
died.
these the Tarantinos.
And understand,
You know me,
the
I love horror
former
movies.
president
We're calling it
has been
Tarantinos
indicted
because of
and
gore.
impeached
The black is
for
supposed to kind of
exactly that
represent the
reason.
gore part
But
and
this is not
like
an
splatters.
isolated situation.
But you know in
Let's
anime and
remember
like censored
Charlottesville,
shows how they make it black or white.
where there was
Think of
a
it like
mob
that.
of people
And then the
carrying
underneath
tiki
originally was
torches,
supposed to be the idea
spewing
of splack,
anti-Semitic
like when you're
hate.
fixing a wall and then
And
you
what
splack
did
something.
the president
But
then
the
at the
texture wasn't
time
coming out the
say?
right way. So then
There were fine
I did
people on
it
each side.
kind of similar to the Black
Let's
Friday
remember
13th,
That
where it's
when it came to the Proud Boys, a militia,
a sense of
the president
New
said,
creation.
the former president said, stand
a
back
father
and
that
stand
paints
by.
his shoes as well as
So for everyone
a father that's
watching who
painting and then his
remembers
shoes
what
get messed
January
up and
6th
then
was,
a
I
son
say,
that doesn't
we don't
have enough
to go
money, so
back.
then he paints his shoes white.
Let's not go back. We're not going back. It's time to turn the page.
In a way, the
And if
Tarantinos
that
are
was a bridge too
story
far for
about
you, well, there is a place
family as well, father and
in
son.
our campaign for you to
A
stand
father who has to provide for his family and a son
country,
who
to stand for our democracy,
understands
to
that
stand for
and
rule of law,
takes the
and to end the
sacrifice
chaos,
and creates his own
and
shoe.
to end
Think of
the
it like that.
approach that is about
There's a couple of
attacking
things.
the
There's a couple of
foundations
things.
our
Young Rallo.
because you don't like the outcome. And be clear.
Motherfuckers
on that
Ajin
point,
from
Donald Trump,
Shinobi
the
Striker or
candidate,
something?
has said in this election there will be a bloodbath. If this
But yeah,
and the
just a
outcome
little
of this
something.
election is
The
not to his
Tarantinos,
liking,
every shoe is one of one.
let's turn the page on this.
One
Let's
day
not
I'm gonna
go
just make a
back.
whole collage
Let's
of shoes.
chart a
The
course
shoes,
for
I
the
see the
future
shoes as
and
my
not go
my
backwards to
canvas.
the past.
The shoes
Let
are
me
my
just follow up
canvas.
here.
You feel me? The shoes are my
was a
canvas. That's
different
what
term,
that's
and
what
it
my
was a
shoes are
term
gonna be.
that related to
Whether I
energy,
work with
because they
Nike
have
or I find
destroyed
some
our
other
energy
shoe
business.
distributor
that, was where
that makes
bloodbath
sick
was.
shoes like
Also,
Nike.
on Charlottesville. That
Or
story
like I'll
has
make my
been,
own
as you
design
would
with the
say,
shoe, but
debunked.
the shoe is your
Laura
canvas.
Ingraham, Sean Hannity,
I'm sure other
Jesse,
people have had that.
all
If
of
I
these
can conceive
people,
it, someone
they
else has
covered
conceived it.
If they go an extra sentence, they will see it was perfect. It was debunked in almost every newspaper, but they still bring it up, just like they bring 2025 up. They bring all of this stuff up. I ask you this. You talk about the Capitol. Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border? How come she's not doing anything? And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it. I would say we would both leave this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it. The President of the United States, you'll get him out of bed.
So Trump
you'll wake
using
him up
straw
at 4
man
o'clock in the
as
afternoon.
well.
You'll say, come
Trump
on,
using
come
straw
on down
man
to
there
the
as
office.
well.
Let's sign a bill. If
Trump
he,
using
if
straw
he
man there as
signs a
well. He's
bill
like, ah,
that
she's
the
been so
border
bad.
is closed, all he has to do is say it to the
I guess
border
people use
patrol.
straw man
Phenomenal.
way more than I
If they
thought.
do
I thought
that,
it was
the
like
border
a
is closed.
sin,
Mr.
but
Those people are killing many people.
I think the
unlike
straw man
J6.
argument is
We talked
supposed to
immigration here
throw
tonight. I do
people
wanna
off of their
focus on
game,
this next issue
as well
because it
as
really brings
the
us,
people who don't really know
this
how to
into focus.
debate. I'm
Truth,
not saying
in
I'm
these
a
times that we're
master
living
debater,
in. Mr.
but,
President, for 3.5 years after
master
you lost the
debater.
2020 election, you
But,
repeatedly falsely claimed you won. Many times saying you won.
I'm not a
in
master
landslide.
debater. I never
In the
claimed to
past
be a
couple of
master
weeks
debater.
leading up to this debate,
But you
have
know what
said,
I'm saying,
quote,
but,
you lost by a whisker, that you quote didn't quite make it. That you
I think
came
it
up a
also
little
just
bit short.
drags the masses
Are
into
you-
it. You know,
are
a little
now
bit of
acknowledging that you
humor,
lost in
a little bit of
2020?
just blunt.
I
you
said
did
that
say that.
sarcastically.
But
You know
those
that.
blunt-
It was said, "Oh, we lost by a whisker." That was said sarcastically. Look,
towards their
there's so
character.
much proof. All you have to do is look at it, and they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got almost
To be
75
fair,
million
Kamala's
votes, the most votes
straw
any
man
sitting
was
president has
probably
ever gotten.
stronger,
I was told
but
if I got 63,
I respect
which is what I got in
it for the fact that
2016,
it definitely
you
made
can't be beaten.
Trump reply. It
The
made Trump
election,
take a lot of
people should
time
never
out of
be
his
thinking about it. An election is
presidential
fraudulent. We need two things. We
aspirations
need walls
to talk
we need-
about
and we have
defending
to have it.
himself.
We have to have borders.
Good stuff,
And
Kamala.
we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak
getting
English.
gory.
They don't even know what country they're in practically.
Tarantino's.
And these people are trying to
getting
get
very
them
messy.
to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
I did watch all of these pieces of video. I didn't detect the sarcasm, lost by a whisker, we didn't quite make it. And we should just point out here as clarification, and you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them
No
Republican.
judge looked at it.
And said
They
there was
said
no
we didn't have
widespread fraud.
standing. That's the other thing. They said we didn't have standing, a technicality. Can you imagine a system where a person in an election doesn't have standing? The president of the United States doesn't have standing. That's how we lost. If you look at the facts, and I'd love to have you'll do a special on it. I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania, and I'll show you. We have so many facts and statistics, but you know what? That doesn't matter because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news. And the problem that we have right now is we have a nation in decline, and they have put it into decline. We have a nation that is dying, David.
Mr. President, thank you. Vice President Harris, you heard the president there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by a whisker. So he still believes he did not lose the election that was won by President Biden and yourself. But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this.
This is
upcoming
interesting. It's
election,
like a
just
clash
weeks away.
between,
He said, when
you know,
I
the
win,
junior and the
those
senior
people who
in this.
cheated, and then he lists
I wouldn't be
donors,
surprised. I
voters,
think
election
Kamala's gonna win.
officials. He says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences.
Actually, I
One of
can't
your
even say that.
campaign's
Trump
top
has a
lawyers
lot of
responded
heat
saying,
as
"We
well
won't let
because
Donald Trump intimidate
he's
us.
also
We
tapping
won't
with the
let
black
him
community. You
suppress
see,
us."
he brought out Sleepy
Is that
Hollow.
what
Like
you believe
what?
he's trying to do here?
He brought out all these rappers.
Donald
You
Trump
know,
was
once you get the
fired
niggas
by
on
81
board,
million people.
it's it.
So let's be clear
Because
about
Kamala
that,
brought out
and
Meg Thee Stallion,
clearly
I
he is
think
having
it's-
a very
I don't
difficult
know,
time
it's-
processing that. But we
I think a lot of
cannot
niggas
afford to have a
like
president
me might
of
not
the United States
rock with that as much.
who attempts, as he did in the past,
And let's
to
be honest, that's
upend
what people
the
really
will
care
of the
about. That's what the
voters in a
main
free
masses
and
care
fair
about. Most
election.
people aren't watching these
And I'm
presidential
gonna tell
debates.
you that
They're watching the
I have traveled the
tour
world
that
as
they
Vice
did,
President of the
and
United
then
States.
the eyes that were
And
on them
world leaders
were
are laughing
way
at Donald
higher when they
I
were
have talked
were
with
bringing out
military
artists
leaders,
because then it
some of
became
whom worked with you,
an
and they say you're a
entertainment.
disgrace.
And
when
it's
you
already
then
entertainment, but it
talk
became
in
even
this
more of an
way
entertainment
in a presidential
faction
debate and deny
in that umbrella of
but over and
entertainment.
over again are court cases you have lost because
Music,
you did in fact lose
the only
that
thing else
election.
would be if they made
It
movies
leads one to believe
or commercials or
that
something.
perhaps
Music
we
is
do
just
not
up
have
there
in
with
the
movies
candidate to my right the temperament
commercials and things.
or the ability
So that's the most
to not
eyes
be
that they got on them,
confused
and she
about
kind of showed who
fact.
she stood
That's
with.
deeply
So we'll see.
troubling, and the American people deserve better.
That's just me though. That's
Give me
me
1 minute.
coming from a music
Let me
standpoint.
just tell you about world leaders.
You know, we
Viktor
make
Orban,
music
one
on
of the
this
most
channel, you know,
respected
6
men-
Dub.
They call him a strong man.
Creators,
He's a
for the
tough
creators,
person.
by the creators, for the North,
Smart.
by the North.
Prime
King of this
Minister
shit.
of Hungary. They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him.
He has a point
North
there.
Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him. I
You
ended
need
the
a
Nord
leader
Stream
that
2
people are
pipeline,
afraid of.
And, Biden
And if
put it
Kamala
back
can
on day
bring
one,
that
but he ended the
intimidation
XL
factor to the
pipeline.
rest of the world
The
leaders,
XL
I'd love it.
pipeline in our country. He
We haven't
ended
seen
that,
it yet from
but he
Biden,
let the
though.
Russians build a pipeline going
She
all
need
over
to be
Europe
stronger
and
than
heading
Biden.
into
If
Germany, the
Biden's
biggest
her
pipeline in the world. Look,
predecessor, her mentor
Viktor
in a
Orban
sense.
said it. He said the
Apple don't
most
fall far from the
respected,
tree.
most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president, but when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes, and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her. But
Mr.
he
President.
got 14 million votes. They threw him out.
Damn.
He got 0 votes.
He
And when
yo,
she
he-
ran,
he really going
she was
in on
the
the straw
first
man
one
now.
to leave
He's trying to
because
throw her
she
off her
failed.
game.
And now she's running. I
trying
don't
to throw her off her
understand, but
game.
I'm okay with it
Mr.
because
President, your time is
I
up.
think we're
Thank
going to
you.
do very well.
We've got a lot more to get to.
Turning now
Yes.
to the Israel-Hamas war and the hostages who are still being held,
Interesting. The
Americans
hostages
among
are
them.
being
Vice President
Americans
Harris in
too.
December,
Canadians
you
as
said,
well
quote,
being held
Israel
by
has a right
Hamas.
to defend itself, but you added, quote, it matters how, saying international humanitarian law must be respected. Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead.
I will
Nearly
say that-
100 hostages remain. Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu
I will
said
say that's
there's not
what-
a deal
I
in the
think Trump's
making.
gonna do a better
President
job in
Biden
that
has not
series
been
as
able
well.
to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand how we got here.
Think about this as well,
On
though.
October
Why
7th,
is
Hamas, a terrorist organization, slaughtered.
okay? She
1,200
actually
Israelis.
acknowledged it. She
Many
acknowledged
of
it.
them young people who were simply attending a concert. Women were horribly raped. And so, absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. Because it is also true, far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. Children, mothers.
I acknowledge that.
What we know is that this war must end. It must end immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out.
I think people
And
are
so we
afraid
will
to call
continue
Hamas
to
a
work
terrorist
around the
organization.
clock on that.
I knew Trump was going to call
Work
Hamas
around
a
the
terrorist
clock, also
organization,
understanding
but
that
I'm
we
surprised
must
Kamala
chart
did.
a
So
course
kudos
for
to
a
her.
two-state solution.
Kudos to
and
her.
in that solution, there must be security for the Israeli people and Israel.
But I
and
do
an
agree.
equal
There's
measure for the Palestinians.
a certain
But the
way
one
that
thing
you can
I will
do things,
assure
you know?
always, I will always give Israel the
America
ability to
would-
defend itself.
America would
in
defend
particular
itself.
as it
Israel's gonna
relates to-
defend itself
as it
as
relates
well.
to Iran and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have security,
I'm okay with that.
self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
President Trump, how would you negotiate with Netanyahu and also Hamas?
We've
in
seen a
order
lot
to
of
get the
countries,
hostages out and prevent the
what?
killing of more innocent
I don't want to say
civilians
something
in
that
Gaza?
I'm not. I'm
If I
an
were
I'm an
president, it
ignoramus,
would
but
have
what?
never
Like
started.
what? South Sudan?
If I were
We've
president,
seen a lot of
Russia
countries
would have
split
never,
off.
Ever, I know Putin very well. He would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years, have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up. Far worse than people understand what's going on over there.
Yeah, I was
When
about
she
to say
mentions
that.
about
Ukraine,
Israel, all of a
Russia.
sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't even
Ukraine,
meet
Russia. You know how many
with
niggas are dying over
Netanyahu
there?
when he went to Congress.
The
to make
eyes
a
are
very
on
important
Israel,
speech.
Hamas,
She
because
refused
it's
to be
almost
there
like
'cause she
blacks
was at
versus
a
whites,
sorority party
Jews
of
versus
hers.
Arabs.
She wanted to go to
That's
the
what they want.
sorority
They want to
party.
feed into that.
She hates
when realistically,
Israel.
it's not
if
Jews
she's
versus
president,
Arabs.
I believe that Israel will
never
not
been Jews
exist
versus
within
Arabs.
2 years from now. And I've been pretty good at predictions, and I hope I'm wrong about that one.
It's a certain
She hates
organization
Israel. At the same
versus a
time,
certain-
in her own
versus
way,
the government.
she hates the Arab population because the whole
Kamala
place
doesn't hate
is
the
gonna
Arab
get blown up.
population.
Arabs, Jewish people, Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the 28 different spheres of terror. And they are spheres of terror, horrible terror. They had no money. It was a
Why
big
you say
story.
terror
You
like
know it.
that?
You covered
Terror.
it very well, actually. They had no money for terror. they were broke. Now they're a rich nation. And now what they're doing is they're spreading that money around. Look at what's happening with the Houthis and Yemen. Look at what's going on in the Middle East.
Yemen,
this would have
Houthis.
never happened. I will get that settled.
Ethiopia,
and fast, and
there's
I'll
been a
get
lot
the
of
war with
murder in
Ukraine and
Ethiopia
Russia
as well.
ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true. I have my entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli people. He knows that.
Everybody hates Israel,
He's trying
though.
to, again, divide and distract from the reality, which is it is very
Everybody
well
hates
known
Jews, everybody hates
that
Israel. It's just a
Donald
fact.
Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator on day one, according to himself. It is well known that he said of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he
I
exchanged
can't breathe. I need to, like-
love letters with Kim
I don't like neti
Jong-un.
pots, so I just use this
And
nasal
it is
mist.
absolutely well known that these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear. They can manipulate you with flattery and favors. And that is why so many military leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace. That is why we understand that we have to have a president who is not consistently weak and wrong on
Vice
national
President
security,
Harris.
including the importance of upholding and respecting in highest regard our military.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
And she's the one that caused it, that's weak on national security by allowing every nation last month for the year, 168 different countries sending people into our country. Their crime rates are way down. Putin endorsed her last week, said, I hope she wins. And I think he meant it, because what he's gotten away with is absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me. The leaders of other countries think that they're weak and incompetent, and they are. They're grossly incompetent. And I just ask one question. Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe? Because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way,
President
gets paid
Trump,
a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We'll be right back with much more of this historic ABC News presidential debate from the National Constitution Center right here in Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
The ABC News presidential debate will continue after this.
This PBS News presentation is made possible by
Consumer Cellular, this is Sam. How may I help you? This is a pocket dial. Well, somebody's pocket. Thought I'd let you know that with Consumer Cellular, you get nationwide coverage with no contract. That's kind of our thing. Have a nice day.
and by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
There's so much divisiveness in this country.
Heightened tensions.
You just have to choose a side. You automatically have to hate the other side.
Deep divisions.
It does get heated. We have big fights.
And a stark choice.
We will make America great again.
We are not going back.
Judy Woodruff brings together citizens from across the spectrum. Crossroads, a conversation with America, September 23rd at 9, 8 Central.
Good evening, I'm Amna Nawaz.
And I'm Jeff Bennett on the NewsHour tonight.
The PBS NewsHour, your source for news you can trust, asking tough questions.
Should Democrats supply their brakes if it means avoiding a government shutdown?
Well, right now, it's very much in the hands of the Republicans in Congress to be able to do just that.
Russia right now has you outmanned, outgunned. Is it time to think about negotiating a settlement?
I'm ready to negotiate now with people who really want peace.
Covering events as they unfold.
How long will Norfolk Southern maintain a presence in East Palestine?
As long as it takes.
All the homes are gone, all the buildings are gutted.
What goes through your mind when you see fire that close to your home?
Oh my God, am I gonna die?
From Capitol Hill,
And even by the standards of this Congress, the drama and the stakes for this week are perilously high.
to around the world.
8 soldiers died, the second deadliest attack on Israeli forces of the war.
What's your message to the Ukrainians who had to live through occupation?
I thank them that they survived through this.
Exploring political divides.
Have you tried to have a conversation with some of the folks who have a different view on these issues?
Oh, yeah. They've been pretty interesting.
Highlighting issues across the country.
You've got larger groups, more people coming across in more remote crossings. What does that mean for your team?
It makes it incredibly difficult for us to respond.
Examining nationwide controversies.
How does this election cycle make you feel in one word?
Nervous. Focusing on issues that matter.
Studies show that young women are experiencing the highest rate of increase in cancer diagnoses.
Addressing changes to our environment.
As we expose more shorelines, we're likely to see more dust.
And that's toxic dust because there is arsenic and heavy metal in this lake bed.
Committed to arts and culture.
U2 is either the most honest and committed band out there or the most pretentious and, self-righteous.
No, not self-righteous.
And that is the NewsHour. For tonight, I'm Jeff Bennett.
And I'm Amna Nawaz. On behalf of the entire NewsHour team, thank you for joining us.
It shows us something between what you see and what you don't see.
This is the story of the most curious man in history.
The influence of Leonardo's vision was enormous.
He's doing things no one had ever done before. And that is simply astounding.
Coming this fall.
It is a stunning and historic development.
This is a brand new presidential race.
The Choice, a frontline tradition for over 30 years. Critics have declared it richly detailed, completely riveting, and perspective on events that don't succumb to the news cycle. The Choice, 2024. Premieres Tuesday, September 24th, 9, 8 Central, only on PBS.
From the National Constitution Center in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, here again, David Muir and Lindsay Davis.
Welcome back to this historic ABC News presidential debate tonight. We're going to continue here, and I want to turn to the war in Ukraine. We're now 2.5 years into this conflict. Mr. President, it has been the position of the Biden administration that we must defend Ukraine from Russia, from Vladimir Putin, to defend their sovereignty, their democracy, that it's in America's best interest to do so, arguing that if Putin wins, he may be emboldened to move even further into other countries. You have said you would solve this war in 24 hours. You said so just before the break tonight. How exactly would you do that? And I want to ask you a very simple question tonight. Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being uselessly, people being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. Look, we're in for 250 billion or more, because they don't ask Europe, which is a much bigger beneficiary to getting this thing done than we are. They're in for $150 billion less because Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe like I did with NATO. They paid billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars when I said, either you pay up or we're not going to protect you anymore. So that's maybe one of the reasons they don't like me as much as they like weak people. But like, you take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 275 billion. They're into 100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president, okay? They respect me. They don't respect Biden. How would you respect him? Why? For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin. Hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try and get it. That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president-elect, And what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact, when I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left, I said, oh, he must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead, and it's only getting worse, and it could lead to World War III. Don't kid yourself, David.
Chicken like that,
We're
I
playing
know.
with World War III, and we have a president that we
I don't want to get my
even know
hands
if
dirty.
he's- Where is our
type
president?
after.
We don't even know if he's a president.
And just to clarify
they
here,
threw him out of a campaign
Big
like a
king shit.
dog. We don't even know. Is he our president? But we have a president,
Mr. President,
that doesn't know he's alive.
your time is up. Just to clarify in the question, do you believe it's in the U.S. best interest for Ukraine to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
All right.
Negotiate
smart
a deal,
answer.
because we have to stop all of these human lives from being destroyed.
I want to take this to Vice President Harris. I want to get your thoughts on
That's why people-
support
yeah.
for Ukraine in this moment.
I think that's why
But
people
also,
like Trump.
as Commander-in-Chief, if elected, how would you deal with Vladimir Putin, and would it be any different from what we're seeing from President Biden?
Well, first of
God
all,
damn.
it's important to remind the
God
former
damn, the
president you're not
potatoes
running
taste so
against
good,
Biden,
bro.
you're running
You don't
against
need
me.
no mashed potatoes when grandma make potatoes like that, yo.
I believe the reason that Donald Trump says that
Her
this
mashed
war
potatoes
would
are
be
crazy,
over
too.
within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened here.
Oh.
I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia
I like that.
invaded,
The patriotic-
tried through force
Kamala
to
is
change
nice and patriotic.
territorial
That's a very
boundaries,
patriotic
to
answer.
defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about
It's
how he
just hot
could
as hell
defend
to hold.
himself. Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery,
defense,
the
the
javelins,
artillery.
the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an independent and free country. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And understand what that would mean, because Putin's agenda is not just about Ukraine. Understand why the European
I don't think
allies
Donald
and
Trump's
our
gonna-
NATO
would've let,
allies are so thankful
Putin just
that
take
you
over
are no
Kiev.
longer president,
I don't
and
think
that
so.
we understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO.
This nigga always protects
and
the
what
allies.
we have done to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their
Never the
independence.
Axis.
Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish
Never the
Americans
Axis.
right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of
So what would the new
favor
Axis be?
and what you think
Russia,
is a friendship with what is known to be
China,
a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
Korea,
Vice
North
President
Korea.
Harris, thank you. We've heard from both of you on Ukraine tonight. Afghanistan came up in the last hour. I wanted her to respond to something you said earlier, and please, I'll give you a minute here.
Putin would be sitting in Moscow, and he wouldn't have lost 300,000 men and women, but he would have been
Planted?
sitting in Moscow. Quiet, please. He would have been sitting in Moscow,
the right banana.
much happier than he is right now. But eventually, you know, he's got a thing that other people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't ever talk about that. He's got nuclear weapons. Nobody ever thinks about that. And eventually, maybe he'll use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening, but he does have that. Something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate peace before this war started.
What?
3 days later, he went in and he started the war because everything
What?
they said was weak and stupid. They said the wrong
that
things.
true?
That war should have never
She said that's not
started.
true.
She was the emissary.
It's probably an
They
asterisk.
sent her in to negotiate with Zelensky and Putin.
Actually, I don't know. I don't
She
know. Let's
did.
hear what she
And
says.
the war started.
Let's
3
hear what she
days later.
says.
And that's the kind of talent
Damn,
we have with her.
he got
She's
her.
worse than Biden, in my opinion. I think he's the worst president in the history of our country. She goes down as the worst vice president in the history of our country. But let me tell you something. She is a horrible negotiator.
This nigga's
They
good at
sent her
debating.
in to negotiate.
This nigga's
As soon
good at
as
debating.
They left. Putin did the invasion.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met Vladimir Putin? Can you clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said it at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fellow. And that is another one. When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I've now met with him over 5 times. The reality is it has been about standing as America always should.
She should.
As
She
a
never.
leader
Oh, she never
upholding
said that.
international
She
rules
never said
and
that she
norms.
didn't meet Putin
As
though.
a leader who shows strength, understanding that the alliances we have around the world are dependent on our ability to look out for our friends and not favor our
Damn,
enemies
that's
because
tough. I
you
wanted her to say
adore
that she never met him.
strongmen instead of caring about democracy. And that is very much what is at stake here. The President of the United States
That's all
is
I need to-
Commander-in-Chief.
That's all I need to
And
hear.
the American people have a right to rely on a president who
At the end of the day,
understands the significance
we see it with
of
Canada, you need a
America's
strong
role
leader.
and responsibility in terms of ensuring that there is stability
Actually,
and ensuring we stand
Trudeau had a
up
10-year
for our
run.
principles and
He did
not
something
sell
right.
them for the benefit of personal
He
flattery.
did a lot of things right.
You talked about Ukraine
But,
and Vladimir Putin. I do want to talk about Afghanistan. It came up in the
You
first
get
hour
itis
of
from
this
having the
debate.
same leader over and
I
over,
wanna
and
move on to
eventually they're
Afghanistan.
going to do
Said
a
Trump did the most
one too
amazing
many
thing I've ever seen. He
mistakes,
got
and then
these
everyone just
countries,
hates them.
The 28 countries at the time to pay up. He said, I've never seen. He's the head of NATO. He said, I've never seen. For years, we
One
were
day they
paying
love you, one day they
almost
hate you,
all
so.
of NATO. We were being ripped off by
10-year run
European
is crazy.
nations, both on trade and on NATO. I got them to pay up by saying one of the statements you made before, if you don't pay, we're not going to protect you.
President
Otherwise, we
Trump.
would have never gotten it. He said it was one of the most incredible jobs that he's ever seen done.
Thank you. I want to turn to Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of the debate, and we witnessed a poignant moment today on Capitol Hill, honoring the soldiers who died in the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do want to ask the Vice President, do you believe you bear any responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. But let's understand
Why is that a
how
good
we
thing?
got to where we are. Donald Trump, when
Why
he
is that
was
a good thing?
president, negotiated
That
one
means
of
America's
the
turning
weakest
weak.
deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal maker. Even his national security advisor said.
Why is that a
it
good
was
thing,
weak,
Kamala?
Terrible deal. And here's how it went down. He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban. The negotiation involved the Taliban getting 5,000 Taliban terrorists released. And get this, and the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David.
Why is he smiling at them?
A place of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the importance of American diplomacy, where we invite and receive respected world leaders. And this former president, as president, invited them to Camp David because he does not again appreciate the role and responsibility
Yeah, Trump won this one.
of the President of the United States to be Commander-in-Chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to the
He
point
just
of how
attacked
he has
her for
consistently disparaged
going for
and demeaned
diplomacy,
members of our military,
to talk to going to
fallen
Russia to talk to
soldiers, and the
Putin for
work that
diplomacy,
we
and then the
must do
war
to
starting 3
uphold
days after.
the strength
And she had to dodge the
respect
question.
of the United States of America around the world.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, your response to her saying that you began the negotiations
thank
with the
you.
Taliban.
So, if you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because, they deal with the wrong people all the time. But I got involved. And Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban.
Oh, no.
And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you're going to have to. 18 months.
What?
We had nobody killed. We did have an agreement.
This
negotiated by
motherfucker
Mike
sent the head of the
Pompeo.
Taliban a
It was
picture
very
of his
good
house.
The reason it
This
was good,
motherfucker's
it was-
cold.
we were getting out. We
Homelander.
would've been out faster than that. We
Homelander.
wouldn't have lost the
Yo.
soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left.
What the hell?
$85 billion worth of brand new, beautiful military equipment behind. And just to finish, blew it. The agreement said you have to
Biden.
do this, and they didn't do it. They didn't do it. The agreement was terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to do. And these people did the worst withdrawal, and in my opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And by
Very
the way,
embarrassing.
that's why Russia
Very
attacked
weak move by
Ukraine,
America.
because they saw how incompetent she and her boss are.
President Trump, thank you. I want to move on now to race and politics in this country. Mr. President,
This goes
you
so
recently
much
said of
deeper
Vice
than I
President
expected.
Harris, quote, I didn't know she
No
was
diddy.
black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something. I couldn't care less.
That's my problem. If
Whatever she
Kamala
wants to
never,
be is okay with me.
But those were your words. So
you never. I hate
know. I
people
mean,
who
all I
don't
can say
accept
is I
their,
read
their
where she
culture.
was
That's like me
not
saying
black.
like, nah, I'm not black.
That
Like,
she put out.
I'm
And
Jewish. I'm just Jewish.
I'll
I'm not
say
black.
that,
I'm
and
just
then
Jewish. I'm not black.
I
Like,
read that she was
that's
black,
crazy.
and that's okay.
That's
Either
crazy.
one was okay with me. That's up to her.
It's either you're a nigga or you're not a nigga. Are you a nigga, Kamala?
I think it's, I mean, honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have.
Yeah, she don't know how to answer.
Wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use
That's all I
race
had to
to
hear.
divide the American people. You know, I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach.
I
that is
understand as like
constantly
a
trying to
political
divide
party.
us, and especially
Remember?
by race. And let's remember how Donald Trump started.
She probably didn't want to be. Oh, I'm black because of the white
He owned land,
supremacists.
he owned buildings, and
But
he
Obama
was
did it.
investigated because
Do it the right way.
he
Do it the right way,
refused to
Kamala.
rent
I don't respect that.
property to black families. Let's remember, this is the same individual
I don't respect that at all.
who took out a full-page
It's either
ad
you're
in
black,
the New
are you a
York
nigga, or
Times
you not a nigga?
calling for the
You can't be choosing
execution
one day to
of
be
5
appeasing the white
young
supremacists.
Black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park Five, took out a full-page ad calling for their execution. This is the same individual who spread birther lies about the first black president of the United States. And I think the American people
Now they're both attacking each other's
want
character,
better
though.
than that.
I think she did better, though.
want better than this.
I think
Want
she
someone
did better.
Who understands as I do. I travel our country.
If they're going against race, she had a really good
We see
answer.
in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor. We don't want a leader.
I don't
who is
respect the fact that she kind of,
constantly trying to have
played the
Americans
line.
Point their fingers at each
I do
other.
respect the fact that she
I meet with people
had a really
all the
good answer to
time
that.
Who tell me, can we please just have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people? Knowing that regardless of people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those, not in hate and division.
She definitely seems, she's definitely going to be a stronger candidate.
This is the most divisive presidency.
She's going to be stronger than, I can't even say that because
they're destroying our country.
what happened with the
And they
whole
come up
Putin
with
thing?
things like what
For
you
me,
just
I
said.
respect strength. That's what I respect,
Many
especially
years,
in a
lot of
leader.
people, including Mayor Bloomberg,
So if the leader don't
agreed
got
with
enough
me on
strength
the
to
Central
put
Park
Putin
fight,
down,
they admitted, they said,
you
they
know,
pled
if
guilty.
Trump is sending pictures to
And I said, well,
the
if they pled
Taliban's
guilty, they
head
badly
Abdul
hurt a person,
of his
killed a
house and
person
saying like, okay,
ultimately.
we're gonna
And
send.
if they pled guilty, then they
It's
pled
not easy for
not
people to
guilty.
just know exactly
But
where
this
the
is a
head of
person
the
that has
Taliban's
to
house
stretch
is.
back years, 40, 50 years ago, because there's nothing now. I built
That
one of
shows
the
strength in
greatest
Trump.
economies in the history of the world.
So we have
and I'm
one
gonna
person
build
who
it
stopped the
again. It's gonna
Taliban
be
from
bigger,
killing as
better,
many
and
soldiers as
stronger.
possible, and then we
But
got
they're
another
destroying
leader
our economy.
that
They
couldn't
have
stop
no idea what a good
Putin
economy
from
is.
attacking
Their oil
Ukraine
policies, every single policy,
and was unable
remember this,
to.
she is Biden. You know,
and
she's
pulled
trying
out
to
their
get away
troops
from
from
Biden. I don't know the gentleman,
Afghanistan,
she says.
right? So
She is
it's
Biden,
strength versus
the worst inflation
a pretty
we've
bad
ever
track
had,
record, and it
a
sucks.
horrible
It sucks for
economy
Kamala because she was probably
inflation has
cleaning up
made it
for
so
Biden.
bad, and she can't get away with that.
She's doing her best with Biden stuff, right?
Briefly.
But I think she's
Clearly,
I think she's stronger.
I
She's
am
doing
not
well
Joe
in the
Biden.
debate.
And I am certainly not Donald Trump. And what I do offer
Let's hear what she
is
says.
a new generation of leadership for our country. One who believes.
I do respect how
in
she
what
answered
is
these
possible.
questions.
One who
I
brings
think she
a
did
sense
pretty
of
well.
optimism about what
If
we can
Trump,
do.
if she was
instead
Trump's
of
vice
always
president, I think she could have
disparaging the American people.
made sure
I
that the
believe in
invasion
what
of
we can
Ukraine
do
never
to
happened. I don't know.
Strengthen our small
I'm just a
businesses,
simpleton.
which
I'm
is
an
why
ignoramus.
I have a plan. Let's talk about our plans and let's compare the plans. I have a plan to give startup businesses $50,000 tax deduction, to pursue their ambitions, their innovation, their ideas, their hard work. I have a plan, $6,000 for young families for the first
Landed
year
it
of your
free.
child's life.
Smart.
To help you.
She's
in that
talking
most
towards
critical
people who
stage of
wanna
your
start
child's
shit.
development. I have a plan that is about
I like it.
allowing people to be able to pursue what has been fleeting in terms of the American dream by offering a help with down payment of $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers. That's the kind of conversation, I believe, David, that people really want
She's
tonight,
smart. She talking.
as
Yeah.
opposed to a conversation that
She-
is
she did well with that.
constantly
She
about
did that well.
belittling and name-calling. Let's turn the page
Vice President
and move
Harris,
forward.
thank you. Let's turn to policy.
President
Let's
Trump,
turn
we
back to
have
policy.
to move on.
The last
President
part
Trump-
was a little bit
Let's turn
weak.
to policy, please.
Name calling and
To
belittling.
defund
Yeah,
the police,
whatever.
she has a plan to confiscate everybody's gun.
President Trump,
She
we-
has
Oh, yeah, he won now.
Pennsylvania
Don't talk
or
about
anywhere
confiscating
else.
guns,
That's
not
what
in
it was
America.
Until just recently.
I just need
Lindsay,
to
go ahead.
respond
President
because
Trump,
the
President
Don't
Trump
talk about-
said
No, I'm
something
sorry.
twice that I need to
No,
respond to.
I'm sorry.
Or
we're
the
gonna-
guns?
we're gonna-
Talk about the guns, Kamala. That's all we want to
President
hear
Trump,
about.
this is
Don't
now
take
your
those
third
guns away,
time
because
running
I'm
for
moving the
president.
states
You
just
have
for the
long
guns.
vowed to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. You have failed to accomplish that. You now say you're going to keep Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better. Last month, you said, quote, we're working on it. So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan, and can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy health care, always was. It's not very good today. And what I said, that if we come up with something, and we are working on things, we're going to do it and we're going to replace it. But remember this, I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it. If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up, they wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, never going to be great, or do I let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically
This
it
is
would have been good to
one of
just
the
let it
greatest
rot
chess
and let it
masters.
go away. I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in that administration. We read about the bad ones. We had some real bad ones too, and so do they. They
I'm
have
terrible
really
at
bad
chess,
ones. The
though.
difference is they don't get rid of them. But let me just explain. I had a choice to make. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, or do I let it rot? And I saved it. I did the right
terrible
thing.
at chess, though.
But it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population, less money and be better health care than Obamacare, then I would absolutely do it. But until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan?
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now. But if
Pawn E7 to
we come up
E5.
with something, I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less expensive. And there are concepts and options we have to do that. And you'll be hearing about it in the not too distant future.
Knight G8 to
Vice President
F6.
Harris, in 2017, you supported Bernie Sanders' proposal to do away with private insurance and create a government-run healthcare system. 2 years later, you proposed a plan that included a private insurance option. What is your plan today?
Well, first of all, I absolutely support, and over the last 4 years as vice president, private healthcare options. But what we need to do is maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act. But I'll get to that, Lindsay. I just need to respond to a previous point that the former president has made. I've made very clear my position on fracking. And then this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying about this stuff. As it relates to the Affordable Care Act, understand, let's just look at the history
I don't know
to
what
where
I'm
people
doing.
stand.
I'm sorry.
When Donald Trump was president, 60 times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times. I was a senator at the time when I will never forget the early morning hours when it was up for a vote in the United States Senate. And the late, great John McCain, who you have disparaged as being, you don't like him, you said, at the time because he got caught. He was an American hero. The late, great John McCain, I will never forget that night, walked onto the Senate floor and said, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan. And what the Affordable Care Act has done is eliminate the ability of insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing conditions. I don't have to tell the people watching tonight, you remember what that was like? Remember when an insurance company could deny? If a child had asthma, if someone was a breast cancer survivor, if a grandparent had diabetes. And thankfully, as I've been vice president and we over the last 4 years have strengthened the Affordable Care Act, we have allowed for the first time Medicare to negotiate drug prices on behalf of you, the American people. Donald Trump said he was going to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He never did. We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month. Since I've been vice president, we have capped the cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000 a year. And when I am president, we will do that for all people, understanding that the value I bring to this is that access to health
fucked up so bad.
should be a right.
I can't do this when I'm on stream.
Those who can afford it. And the plan has to be to strengthen the Affordable Care Act, not get rid of it, pass this prologue in terms of where Donald Trump stands on that.
I want to move to an issue that's important for a lot
She made a mistake. At number one, John McCain fought Obamacare for 10 years. But it wasn't only him. It were all of the Democrats that kept it going. And you know what? We can do much better than Obamacare, much less money. But she won't improve private insurance for people, private medical insurance.
Can I only castle on the rook
That's
on the
another
king
thing
side?
she doesn't want to get. People are paying privately for insurance that have worked hard.
Let's just finish
and made
this
money,
game
and
quick.
They want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait 6 months for an operation that you need immediately.
President Trump, thank you. We have another issue that we'd like to get to that's important
I have
for
no
a number of
defense.
Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change.
all in on the
President Trump, with
attack.
regard to
It's
the
terrible. I'm gonna
environment,
get
you say
checkmated
that we
right
have
here.
to have clean air and clean water. Vice President Harris, you call climate change an existential threat. The question to you both tonight is, what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for you each.
Well, the former president had said that climate change is a hoax. And what we know is that it is very real. You ask anyone who lives in a state who has experienced these extreme weather occurrences, who
I didn't mean
now
to do
is either
that.
being denied home insurance or it's being jacked up. You ask anybody who has been the victim of what that means in terms of losing their home, having nowhere to go. We know that we can actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as vice president over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy while we have also
Why would I do that?
increased domestic gas production
Okay, what I should do.
to historic levels.
Go back.
We
go back,
have
go back.
created over
What I
800,000
should
new
do,
manufacturing jobs while I have
because-
been vice president. We have invested in clean energy to the point that we are opening up factories around the world. Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs.
No,
He
no,
lost
no, no, no,
manufacturing
because then that
jobs.
takes away my
And I'm also
goddamn.
proud to have the endorsement of the
Then
United
that takes
Auto
away my
Workers and Sean
goddamn
Fain,
defense
who
right
also
there.
know that part of building a clean energy economy includes investing in American-made products, American automobiles. It includes growing what we
it's
can
3
do
steps
around
ahead, so I
American
gotta think 2 steps
manufacturing
ahead,
and
so
opening up
I can
auto
only do
plants,
that
not
to-
closing them like happened under Donald Trump.
How is he?
President Harris,
How's
thank you.
It didn't happen
What
under
the
Donald
fuck?
Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost 10,000 manufacturing jobs this last month. It's going, they're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases owned by China. They're building these massive plants.
I think I know what I gotta
to
do.
sell their cars into the United States
Although-
because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable. But we're not going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they can't
I
come
need
into
to
our
castle
country
on one
because
side.
they
I
will
need to
kill
move my
United Auto Workers
Queen's
and any
pawn
auto
up,
worker, whether it's in
because then I get a
Detroit
lot
or
more
South
power
Carolina
from
or
there.
any other place. What
Now
they've
he's
done
copying
to
my move
business
there?
and manufacturing in this country is
Nope.
horrible. We
Take
have
back move.
nothing because they refuse.
I can't block
Biden
off
doesn't go after people
this
because
pawn.
supposedly
I'm
China
gonna
paid
move
him
this pawn
millions of
up
dollars.
here.
He's afraid to do it between him and his son. They get all this money from Ukraine. They get all this money from all of these different countries. And then you wonder, why is he so loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine, China? Why is he? Why did he get $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife? Why did she pay him $3.5 million? This is a
I'm not gonna
crooked
castle until I have to.
administration, and they're selling our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with closing statements from both of our candidates. An historic night, this ABC News presidential debate from Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
The ABC News presidential debate will continue after this.
Smart move.
This PBS News presentation is made possible by
Consumer Cellular, this is Sam. How may I help you? This is a pocket dial. Well, somebody's pocket. Thought I'd let you know that with Consumer Cellular, you get nationwide coverage with no contract. That's kind of our thing. Have a nice day.
and by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Wreck your hips.
Asking tough questions to those in power.
This is when it gets tough. This is when it gets tough. This is when it gets tough.
Russia right now has you outmanned, outgunned. Is it time?
This is when it gets tough.